where we talk with some of Oregon's best people and find out how they're holding up during the pandemic. Today, our guest is Evren Odcikin, and Evren is an amazing guy, but he is the Associate Artistic Director at Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and I've actually known him for quite some time. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you today because, because right before lockdown, we were supposed to meet in real life.
Yeah, no, I was in
like the week
Portland directing. Yeah, I was in Portland, and I remember you were like I think someone from
my neighbor.
Yeah, your neighbor got COVID, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I have to get on a plane and go to a town that is not Portland. So I'm going to keep meeting you, which was, I had forgotten about that. That whole 2 weeks is so blurry for me because I was in another city opening and closing a show while we were going through the process of closing 5 shows at my home theater. It was just like the craziest month ever.
Yeah, it was a very strange time. It's so strange because my baby was like a little baby then, and now she's like a child, and it's hard to like really wrap your head around that because it also seems like it was about 2 minutes ago. We went to Disneyland at the beginning of February, which I now think like that's the craziest thing anyone's ever done.
When are we going to do that next? Not for a while, probably.
Yeah, good thing we got that out of our system if we did. Well, I'll say just, because I'm a journalist, in full disclosure, Evren and I used to work together at KQED in San Francisco so long ago when we were cool living in San Francisco. I guess we're older now.
Older, wiser?
Maybe still cool, maybe not as cool. But so how long ago did you move to Ashland?
I've been in Ashland for a year and a half, a little over a year and a half. Nataki Garrett, who's the new artistic director, who's been here, I think, year and a half plus couple of months, sort of had pinged me for the position. And I was supposed to start end of July last year. And I came in beginning of June just to watch shows and meet people. And there was such a huge need for my presence. Nataki was like, can you start now? And I was like, sure, I'll just throw my whole life up in the air and move here. I mean, it's such I can't complain too much at this moment, especially where having a job in the theater where I still get to push forward anything artistic is such a sort of, I feel like, luxury that I'm very, very happy to be here. And it's just, OSF is one of those theaters that we all sort of dream one day to get to. And the fact that I get to be here as my artistic home it's still, I've been here for, almost 2 seasons, and it's still like a pinch me kind of thing.
That's amazing. I mean, it is kind of interesting because I guess you had one sort of normally season. Did you have a full normal season? Or?
I did not. I came in in June, which meant that I sort of took over the on the ground producing of the end of the 2019 season, which was not my season or Nataki's season. We were sort of taking over it from the previous administration, so to speak. Amazing, beautiful season that had many plays that I would love to have in seasons I help choose and produce, but so I had to sort of close that season, which was a few months, which was crazy to sort of go from an outsider to being the lead producer of an 11-show repertory season is a learning that I feel pretty proud that I survived that. And then we went through the selection process, casting all of that stuff for 2020, opened our first 5 shows, and then closed 6 days later, and then had to cancel the rest of the shows sort of a few months after. Which has been really, it's been disappointing in a way, especially because of the impact it has on all the artists. I mean, so many of our artists are residents who have lived here and worked here for so long. We had so many folks who this was their big coming out OSF moment, you know. So, and it's just, and some of those people I was, instrumental in getting them here. They're like my heart artists that were, getting their OSF moment. So that just, it's kind of funny. This last weekend was our closing weekend theoretically of the 2020 season, and I couldn't even usually, you do a Facebook post, and I couldn't even do that. It was just like sad between that and the election. I was like, I'm just going to ignore this moment.
Maybe just eat cookies or something.
It's been a lot of baked goods. I'm more of a scone guy, but yeah.
Yeah, I got like, I I usually do a lot of baking. Well, I've been doing a lot of baking during the pandemic, but on election day morning, I went to the bakery in town in the morning and just like got like half a dozen pastries, but that ended up being 8. And I think there was just 2 of us and the baby who were like, "Oh, here you have a bite of this croissant." Well, I eat the whole thing, and it was okay. I'm still exhausted.
Whatever diet I was not on before this during the pandemic, because between the pandemic and the Southern Oregon fires that were very close to us, the level of stress, I've really not been paying that much attention to my diet. And this week, I think it's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. And well, how is it moving from San Francisco to Ashland? Like, that must have been a pretty dramatic change.
Yeah, no, it is. How do I put this? I mean, San Francisco was home. It wasn't. I've been there. I was there for 15 years. It was the place that I lived the longest, actually, in my whole life. So it wasn't just that it's a big city to a small city, small town move, but it's really, I left home, what it feels like, for the first time. And my husband was, born in Hong Kong, but moved to the Bay Area when he was 5 and went to Berkeley. So it was very much home for him as well.
His family is there, right?
Yeah, his family is still there. And we actually held on to our place in San Francisco for the time being, just because he still works in San Francisco, although he's been up here with me. Because
I know. I feel like he's there with you a lot.
Yeah.
It's just what I see on Facebook.
I mean, that's like the one weird silver lining of the pandemic, is because my career was so much travel. We, as a couple, never lived together for this long ever in our lives. And we're still doing well, which is good.
That's good. That's a great thing to discover about your partner, right? To be like, oh, actually, because I feel like some people are discovering the opposite.
I mean, it's also when you're this stressed for all the jobs that we have, everyone's job is impacted.
Totally.
And life, and then, seeing each other 24/7. And, we don't have children. We have a dog. So, like, I don't even know, like, I'm not even going to get into the stress of child quarantine. It makes a lot of sense. But yeah, no, it's Ashland is beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful community. It's like obsessed with theater, right? You just said this. It's theater Disneyland.
That's
like, all our restaurants are named after Shakespeare characters, and every single person you meet at the coffee shop has an opinion about whatever play is going on at the theater. So it's just to go from San Francisco, where theater is huge, there's a really big theater community, but it's not centered in the cultural communication, like cultural conversation of the city, to here, where it's like very much front and center. That's been positive. I do miss, late night ability to eat ethnic food. Like that would be nice to have.
Good luck, yeah.
And it is Southern Oregon is Ashland itself is this little blue dot in a sea of red. And so whenever you go outside of Ashland, it's a very different experience that I'm not used to from living in San Francisco, or really being fairly coastal, like my whole American life. So it's a change. We're certainly, as an interracial queer couple, have to sort of like figure out what that means for us.
Right.
But it's also just like, my life is OSF here, and that's fantastic, because the OSF community itself and the people I work with are such beautiful humans, and like the best at their jobs, and that's kind of nice to be part of.
I'm so glad. I think I probably haven't seen you in I don't know. I mean, I moved back to Oregon 6 years ago, and
only 6 years. It feels like
but it's crazy. Like maybe you left KQED before I did. I don't know. Were you there in 2012?
No, you left before, because I hired a replacement.
Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense, actually. But I just want to take a second to say it makes me so happy to see that you are doing something that makes you so happy, and that I'm doing something that makes me happy. I'm like, what if 6 years ago we could have told our little baby selves. Just hold on, it'll be okay.
Well, it
I
feels
mean, not
like
that KQED was bad, but
no, KQED was fantastic, and I actually
yeah.
say my time at KQED is so instrumental in whatever success I've been able to have at OSF,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just a very different thing to work at an organization of size, like
Yeah.
of scope. And
Mm-hmm.
KQED is a local organization that has national, international reach. OSF
Right.
is a local organization like every theater, but actually has
Yeah.
major statewide, national, international reach,
Oh yeah.
especially in this new digital space.
Mm-hmm.
So it requires a sort of different kind of engagement with
Mm-hmm.
work. And
Right.
whatever I'm able to do here, I mostly learned working at KQED. And the thing I will say, we did really well in the sense that, yes, we were working at KQED and our specifically assigned jobs were relevant, but like day jobby, right?
Right.
But we were both certainly carving out a lot of space. And I do admire our manager's ability to make space for that, to actually explore the thing we were really was our passion and calling. For me, that's theater and the arts. For you, it was actually creative journalism, so
Yeah.
and I feel like we
Yeah.
got to do a lot of that while we were there,
We
while we were
did.
together, while
Some
we
things like
marketed news shows.
right. But some of the stuff that pops up sometimes like in Facebook or whatever, I'm like, oh my gosh, we had a really good time. We did
We did.
we had a fun time. And I know Emmanuel, another person that we used to work with, sometimes we used to be like, is this really like our job? Like,
Yeah.
and it seemed like we were working with, there was a group of not very many people our age. I think that was part of why they gave us so much leeway, because they were like, you millennials, maybe we, we need you to figure out what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just remember, I don't know why that I thought of this the other day, but like there was a chocolate factory like 2 blocks away from the
Mhm.
office, and like just like before a meeting, I just remember going with you to get like some chocolate dessert, and then we went to the fancy coffee shop and just like spent a lot of time walking. Maybe because now we don't have that at all in any work, where
You
you're like
remember like
walking
leaving
around
your
with
house?
friends. Yeah. Getting treats and walking around with
Yeah.
friends. It just seemed so nice to think about. Like,
Well,
oh
I do
yeah.
have to say though, like I feel like you and Emmanuel were the cool kids for sure. If, in terms of millennials, I'm like borderline millennial,
I
and
know. You're just like in the
because
middle.
I was born and raised in another country. I was born and raised in Turkey. Like I don't function as a millennial because like I'm from a country where I came in first and nobody said good job. Like like
Yeah.
that's the educational
Like
system in Turkey. So I don't quite have the same like cultural norms. Having said that,
yeah.
I always appreciated being adjacent to the cool kids.
Oh, you were one of the cool
So
kids too.
that was nice.
You probably had more responsibility than us. But
Way, I mean, it was like manager level, and as you said, I feel like, and this is something. Now we're just like raving about KQED, I guess today.
yeah, it's
Um,
fine.
I mean, I learned also a lot from the folks who managed me and us, like
hmm
the ways in which you can actually uplift people and their passion and their growth.
hmm
And that's certainly something I take really seriously in this new position where I do have like a now smaller, but still actually pretty extensive team of folks who are brilliant and
Yeah.
younger
Yeah.
than us because we're
I
not
know, now we're old.
at all. And,
I know.
and like have a million amazing ideas that I could never, ever actually think of because
Right.
I'm not that young and cool anymore. So it's in
Right.
that way, yeah, there's just something about that culture that feels really important.
hmm
And I actually was part of the OSF culture before I got here.
hmm
But that, like all my producing team are artists in their own right. And it's really
Right.
important to me that all of them have a chance to exercise their artistic muscles and they approach producing from an artistic space. And that if
hmm
they have an off the wall artistic creative thought about our administrative work, yeah, let's consider it. You know what I mean? So
That's
like, and I think
awesome.
that's
Right.
all part of that upbringing that we had together.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
true. There was I mean, several people there that really did that. But I just remember when Michael Lupitin came in,
Mhm. Oh
like
yeah,
changed
Michael.
my life.
Oh my God, Michael.
Just like, I know Michael. I should text him.
I know.
Um,
That's
he's
so
in
hard.
LA or something,
Yes.
just living the life. But yeah, just like he was just so such a good manager. Like, so just, yeah, like found what you were good at and really wanted you to be better at it, and was never trying to like keep you in line or something like that.
I mean, it's also like, I mean, this generational conversation about how work gets done is so interesting to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a very old school way, especially a lot of nonprofit theaters have functioned, where it's like, it's very hierarchical, and then it's very sort of like one way of doing things, and you're just kind of repeating the same action over and over again every year. And that's just like not how people work now. And not to say we have to throw all structure and hierarchy out the window, because I've been in places where that's happened, and I can assure you that doesn't work either. But it is important for us to continue to think about the ways in which we structure ourselves and communication. And, you know, OSF, I don't want to overstate OSF's success in this, because it's just, it's a huge organization that grew at a rate that's actually not necessarily healthy, if that makes sense, at the time. I mean, it's really impressive. But now we're like, as the new folks, part of our job is to figure out what the right size for the organization is, especially right now. And also how we can set up a structure that fully supports the incredible work that's been going on stages against all odds, to be honest. Like, with not enough support, people have been really like throwing themselves at the work in a way where, you know, some of the best theater that's being done in the country is being done here. And now we need to like get our structure together so that doesn't come at the expense of the bodies and minds and souls of the people who are on the line doing the work.
That's amazing that you're thinking about that, because I feel like there's so much in artistic or creative work that is like about sacrificing everything, you know, and getting paid nothing. That's like this sort of, it's like what you're expected to do, and it's not sustainable.
It's not. And, you know, I've been in the freelance game for so long. I've worked at much smaller organizations, medium-sized organizations, large organizations, and it's the same everywhere. You know, and that is a systemic issue, right? That's a white supremacist systemic issue. You've got to be thankful, right? And I am so thankful. Like, thankfulness, like, I am so thankful to have this position, to have access to leaders like Nataki Garrett and David Schmitz, to have any say or input or leadership within like what the future holds. I'm so thankful. But also, like, I think, you know, I don't know how much this is known outside of the field, but there has been this amazing document put together called "We See You, White American Theater," by really, I think, 30 BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color folks, mostly female identified, mostly Black, actually, who've put together this like 25-page document that really goes through and tells you all the ways in which our systems in the American theater have failed artists of color specifically. But, you know, you can extrapolate from that for decades of systemic, like institutionalized oppression and underserving communities, underserving artists, and sort of what I call charity-based equity, diversity, inclusion work, where it's like, we have the stuff and we give it to those poor people. And they should be thankful that they're invited to
missionary work,
you know. And that's been really the core of the EDI work that's happened in the American theater. So there is a lot happening in the air, and there are these documents and conversations that aren't happening. So in that way, it's a good time to be anywhere but at OSF, because I know that a lot of folks who have my background and my identifiers, who've had to make a career in white American theater, who've had to really actually give up a lot of their identity or give up the fight to be able to be successful. And I feel pretty lucky that I'm at an organization with leaders where I don't have to do that right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, basically what you're talking about is also, you could say the same thing about journalism. You could say the same thing about, and it's, I think in a lot of places are having these conversations, and it's really, it's hot. It's sad that it's taken so long, and there's still so much more work to do, but creating, I don't know, just like ways, so it isn't just privileged white people,
Mhm.
white men who
Okay.
are, able to do things like internships. This is in journalism, like, not everyone has that ability or the networks that lead to that, or um,
Yeah, and for me, really, uh, I'm an ambitious person. You know me from
really,
that,
yeah.
like I don't want to
Maybe the most.
understate my like ambitions to get to a position like this.
Yeah.
But very early, I had to realize that this wasn't going to happen for me in the way that I was told it would happen for people.
Right.
Like I've
Mhm.
never actually had an entry level artistic position at a theater because I couldn't afford to.
Right.
Right,
Mhm.
I couldn't take
Yeah.
any of those assistant directorships at
Mhm.
American Conservatory Theater at Berkeley because they didn't pay
Mhm.
enough. And the
Right.
idea was that I was going to be working full time, and I'm an immigrant with no
Right.
financial safety
Mhm.
net. So not
Right.
only do I have to pay rent, I have to have health insurance. There were parts in my life where I had to send money back home,
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it became pretty clear to me that my career had to be built in this weird parallel space where I was
Mhm.
doing artistic work at smaller to medium-sized companies where
Mhm.
my money wasn't coming from there. And then I had to
Mhm.
have administrative work, which in my case
Mhm.
ended up being marketing and communications, which is how I
Mhm.
ended up at KQED at a much
Right.
higher level
Uh-huh.
work. And it was interesting that finally this past, like the year that I got this job, and Nataki also has gone through a very similar process career-wise. So she
Mhm.
really could look at my resume and go, that
Mhm.
makes sense. That
Right.
experience and this experience put together makes
Yeah.
an associate artistic director.
Right. Yeah.
But it took, 15, 16 years of doing two jobs, like really three full-time jobs, which nobody should have to do for success. Like that's just like not
Right.
okay. And
Yeah.
I publicly all the time say, I didn't get here because I'm the best. I got here
Mhm.
because like I refused to quit. There were many people who were coming up with me in the theater world
Yeah.
in the Bay Area
Yeah.
who I think are better directors than me, possibly
Got
are
it.
better
Right.
leaders than me that
Yeah.
quit,
Right.
because it's just not,
Mhm.
the system is not set up for us to succeed. And I don't want others coming after me to have to do what, like, I'd like to think that if I can leave this industry better for up
Yeah.
and coming immigrant artists than what I received, that would be
Mhm.
success.
That's amazing. Yeah, this is great. Oh, there's a baby who's gonna come say
I love
hi.
it.
Um, but we aren't done because I have like at least one more question to ask you.
Oh,
But this is Nona. This is my baby Nona. Nona, can you say hi to Evren?
Mona. Oh my God.
Can you say hi?
This is my
She's playing
favorite.
with Grandma and Grandpa downstairs.
My favorite thing is right now, because of the pandemic moment, I'm getting to meet everyone's children. And I
Yeah.
think it's a nightmare for the parents because you actually have to pay attention to your baby and work. But for us on the receiving end, this is the best. Just so you know.
Well, I'm actually leaning into it.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you go see Grandma? You wanna say bye bye? Yeah. Can you say bye bye? Okay,
No.
well, you can say bye bye,
The
but I'm not
answer is
going
no.
to say bye bye. The answer is you're not the boss of me,
Exactly.
mother. Oh, there. Oh, she wants to take a bath. Too bad. Um,
Not
yeah,
right
I
now.
actually have just like I just have given up. I'm just like, yeah, here's my baby. I was doing like a Facebook Live that wasn't supposed to involve the baby for work the other day. I just acknowledged that no one's going to show up on this show,
Mhm.
and she just started screaming, and I
Oh, wow.
was like, oh well,
So that's what I mean. It's
whatever.
like that's like a nightmare for
Mm,
you more than me, right? Like if your
yeah.
baby is crying in the room where you're working, that's harder for you, actually.
It is, but, like, I think I'm lucky because she's so young that,
Mhm.
like,
You can
I
control.
feel like it's a gift too. I'm just like, "I love my baby, I get to see her every single day."
I mean, it's so funny. I'm hoping this pandemic moment again is so terrible for my specific industry, right? Like the whole industry is shut down and we have, I don't know,
Mhm.
3 times the unemployment rate than any other
Oh god.
industry in entertainment
Yeah,
because like literally theater is based on people gathering in large
right.
numbers in spaces. That's
It's
our
just a super
business.
spreader event.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So, but the one silver lining I think is there was no space made in our industry for mothers, especially
Mm.
new mothers, like nursing, etc. And there
Oh,
was like
yeah.
such tiny steps being made
Uh-huh,
towards that. And it was
uh-huh.
always so weird to me because again, like if a mother has to pump in during a rehearsal break,
Yeah,
that's hard for them. it
Oh God, yeah.
literally has no impact on my process.
Right,
You
yeah.
know, like union breaks for theater is 10 minutes.
Oh gosh.
That's not enough time.
No,
You know,
it's not
and we
enough.
were just starting that conversation on like,
Mhm.
how do you expand some of the breaks and the
Right.
breadth in the processes, which cost money, sure, but
Yeah.
also we can't afford to lose all of these amazing female artists
Right.
for 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
and
that's
then
actually
they're never
doesn't
gonna
help
come
us.
back. Yeah, it's like that's the thing. It's like, um, yeah, there's so many reasons that people get that people quit, like you were talking about before. You know, it's like these cool creative jobs are hard, and
Mhm.
they're harder and harder and harder for different people
Yeah,
depending on your circumstances. And
yeah.
there's so many reasons to quit. And uh, yeah, I mean,
And I have to say, like OSF, before I got here,
yeah,
OSF has been sort of a leader in all of these conversations. Not
mhm,
perfect, who is, but
nobody. Yeah,
really, it's been quite centered in the
that's
ways
awesome.
in which the system is thought about. But the thing with a repertory, where for those of
Mhm,
you who might not know, like repertory means like
mhm,
all the shows are happening at the same time. At our peak time, which would have been like
yeah,
summer, you have
yeah,
10 to 11 shows happening in 3 theaters, which means twice a day the full set and the full thing is changing. Like it is an army of people.
that's
I mean,
amazing.
no, it's
Like,
so impressive. Like,
yeah,
so, and when you have a timeline like that or a work
mhm,
pressure like that, it
yeah,
is hard to make space
yeah,
for needs,
right,
whatever those, like accessibility
totally,
for
yeah.
mothers, for
Oh yeah,
people who need sleep. I mean,
right.
like just
You
like
know,
actual humans who have bodies. And that is
our
and
robot actors are doing great, but the rest
exactly,
of us are
you
like
know.
a little tired.
Oh no, it's like
Yeah,
white knuckling your way through the season
I
was the
can't.
way OSF worked.
Mhm.
And again, such amazing work has happened under those conditions.
Yeah,
But let's see if we can do better, you know?
right. I think maybe the pandemic is like there's so many horrible things about everything that's going on right now, but there is something about like completely changing the way you think about everything.
Mhm.
Like maybe we can rethink it all. Maybe we tear down all these systems and just like build better ones, you
I
know?
mean, the thing that's interesting though is on the flip side, OSF
Mhm.
people, I always say this, like nobody beats an OSF person when it comes to an emergency, right?
Really?
Our whole
Yeah.
system was built on emergency response. And before I got here again, we got the fires early,
Oh yeah.
right, in Southern Oregon. So,
Mhm.
and because of the topography of Ashland and the valley we're in, like
Right.
any smoke that
You get
is
fired.
around,
You get
we get it.
yeah. Yeah.
Even if we don't have the fire, we get the smoke. So,
Yeah.
um, in a way, like that response and the sort of very heartful human response to taking care of things and other people is built
Mhm.
into the culture of the organization, which was like
Mhm.
in full display in terms of the OSF response to the fires that just happened in
Yeah.
September. Because
Oh, yeah.
like
You guys
I
had
can't
all this
take
stuff going
any
on.
credit in the sense that as a leadership team, we were like trying to call people, track people down to make sure everyone is safe and alive, to be honest.
Yeah.
And by the time I raised my head, there was a donation center set up by people who are on
Wow.
staff and also people who were laid off. They just
Wow.
made it happen. And all we had to do was to support it. And that, like,
Wow.
I've never seen that anywhere
That's
else. So
amazing.
I can't say, as we're talking about culture change and all that
Yeah.
stuff, there is also so much of the artistic theatrical culture, specifically at OSF, that will not change because
Yeah.
it is literally the best of humanity. And as
That's
we're like going
awesome.
through this week where the worst of humanity is so foregrounded, you know what I mean? That like I like have to think back on those moments of what
Yeah.
people are capable of when
Mhm.
something real like a fire burning through whole towns in your region happens and people
Yeah.
are homeless, and we can house people, we can take care of the donations, we can fundraise. I mean, the amount of fundraising that's happened both on behalf of OSF in terms of our gala where we share
Yeah.
the proceeds with organizations in the front lines doing fire relief work, but like people who are out of work fundraising for people who've lost their homes. Like
Amazing.
it's
That's
incredible,
crazy. I mean, so good. Sorry, I'm trying to stop saying that's crazy. One thing that I say all the time. I'm trying to stop saying
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Um,
I mean, it
but
is. It's too bad
it's
that
really
it
cool.
feels crazy because I
Yeah.
think it is actually how we're wired as
It's
people, and in a
yeah.
way, like it's been beaten out of our systems by capitalism and white supremacy.
I think you're 100% right.
You know what I mean? And actually,
Yeah.
it's like we can remember that,
Mm-hmm.
and this is journalism in your field, it's nonprofit work in my field. We're here to be of service. I tell stories because I like to be in service of people. I think stories are one of the biggest ways you can uplift people and change narrative and make change. That's why I work as hard as I do in the theater. But like, we forget, it becomes about the bottom line so quickly. And it's nice to be working at a place where that service is centered. And it feels very much like, that's why it feels like home so quickly for me, OSF, is because that's been, now looking back, my driving factor throughout my professional career. And now I'm finally at a place, well, not KQED was very similar. I'm at a place,
but you weren't doing the thing.
Exactly, right? Like, so I feel like my values are centered as well as my work. Like, those two things don't have to be separated in some way.
Right. Yeah. And you're right. That's part of capitalism, is like tricking you into thinking that those are siloed things, and, values are something that's cute, but work is something else.
I mean, even at OSF, I have to say, like, we are by our mission a social justice institution, right? Like, that is in our mission and value statement.
Right.
But even here, there's so many conversations I find myself taking part in where the art and social justice is separated. Like, we talk about, it's like, how are we going to highlight social justice in this? I'm like, it's just not how. I mean,
everything is.
I'm a Middle Eastern queer man, immigrant artist, right? It's, like, there is no separation. My existence is social justice.
Right.
So it's
just by being here. Yeah.
So it just feels like the more we can, as we said, like, as these conversations are happening, if we can just separate, if we can keep ourselves from separating the work from the work.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's easier, actually.
Yeah, I think so too. And it isn't as much work when you think about that. It's all really combined, and we should be interrogating everything we do to see if it is supporting white supremacy and oppression, and and if it is, then there's
it's also like,
don't have to do it.
Charity. Like, I'm gonna sound a little bit like full of myself, but like, don't hire me because I fulfill a social justice quota. I'm a great director. Like, actually, we should be changing our organizations. And again, OSF, in terms of the hiring and supporting of artists of color, is like leagues ahead of the rest of the industry. You should be changing your systems, because you know who some of the best artists doing the best work are. If your mission is to make good art, you're
missing them.
It's actually about doing the best work for the most number of people. So it's not separate. It's not separate
at all. I mean, think about journalism. It's not separate at all. I mean, our job is to, report and like shed light on things that are happening in our communities. And how do you do that if you're not part of the community? I mean, like, you can't. It isn't charity to hire people that look like the people that you're covering. That is the job.
Although I do have to say, like, I don't want to. I do want to double down on something, because, and this is really, I'm borrowing this from Nataki Garrett, who's a brilliant, brilliant woman. I'm not just saying that to suck up to my boss, I swear.
Well, that's fine.
It's not accidental that folks were not in the room, both as people being served and people making the work. It is purposefully excluded. Right. And we have to be able to make our peace with that and address it if we're going to fix things. I mean, the fix is really simple now, because so many people have the education, experience, lived experience to be able to jump into these positions and not just succeed, like thrive. Right. So it's not even that hard to find people in that way. In the artistic world, I will say, there are other fields.
No, same. I think
on the
everywhere.
Administrative side, there are different things you have to take into account in terms of career development and stuff. But we weren't in the room because we were disinvited from the room.
I feel like, yeah, you're actually what you're talking about. The reason I laughed is like, oh, you mean you're talking about the whole problem with America? Like, yes, it was purposeful, and yes, we have to address that before we can actually have any change or growth. I mean, the fact that the United States is a country based in racism and white supremacy and oppression is not an accident.
No,
That's
it
how
was
it was built.
literally built that way.
So
You
if
know?
we don't take responsibility and acknowledge it, and I would say do something about it. But anyway, I'm that's not really political. That's just like I think a fact
No.
that the United States is built on racism. I'm allowed
See,
to have
that's my
opinions.
thing is like, I do think it's so funny you said that because I think we all feel it, especially if you're in a public or a leadership kind of position where it's easy for you to feel like speaking about equity or inclusion or anti-racism is somehow a political act.
Right.
It's
But it's
not
not. It's really
at
not. Yeah.
all. Like,
Yeah.
and we have to normalize these conversations.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think the system functions on our fear of having the conversation, but also by those of us who've been having the conversation for a long time. And I'm not even just talking about myself. I'm standing on the shoulders of many folks who've been having this conversation for
Right.
decades,
Yeah.
And if you slow me down so that I bring the slowest person in the group with me, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's about having the conversation and just doing it. And people need to educate themselves and come along.
Right.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? There comes a certain point where, we want to bring everyone together. And yes, wouldn't it be great if we all agreed?
Right.
But that's actually yet another way we stop progress, right?
Right.
It's
And
actually
maybe,
like, this is what we're doing.
yeah.
You're more than welcome to come. Here are some articles. You should like Google anti-racism and read some things.
Right.
And then if you then once you are able to engage with the action of anti-racism, then we can talk.
Right. And I think that there's this problem too, even being like, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk about it, is like, because some people take it personally, and that's not what it's about. Like saying that the United States is built on racism is not saying that every American person is bad. Saying that all of us, all white people benefit from systems of oppression and white supremacy doesn't mean that, I think we're all bad people. It's just like, that is it. That's the fact. It's not like
acknowledging your own privilege inside of a system does not make it so that you didn't work hard or you did not have it's possible that you're a white woman,
exactly,
which is a complicated identity in this current moment, right? So we can acknowledge the ways in which one part of your identity has suffered for a long time and another part of your identity has actually put you ahead. And I'm interested in those complicated conversations. Same for me. I'm very much a white passing cis man, and I've had the privilege of having great high level education. And that means that, I was invited into all sorts of rooms that, like, to be honest, my brother would not have been.
Right.
Just luck of the genetic draw.
Right. Yeah.
So in that way, like, I can say that and I can acknowledge that privilege. And I can also, in the same sentence, acknowledge the other ways in which I've been othered and disinvited and had to fight the fight. And those two things, as long as we're able to leave space for the full complex humanity of people inside of our systems, we can have all sorts of conversations.
Right. And maybe this is what comes back to telling stories, telling stories is what we can do. It's like the only thing to do about this. It's like, the more stories we can tell, the more different kinds of stories, personal stories, real stories, the more people will, I don't know. I do think there's this power in storytelling that it creates our culture, and so we can create our culture through the stories we tell.
And it would be so amazing in a way if stories, my biggest push these days is that I want to give an opportunity for people who have been disinvited from the room to tell their stories, which is a huge part of journalism, huge part of theater specifically, because it's a communal art form. If you think about it, you're in the room with the person.
Yeah, amazing.
Stories being telling, which is a great opportunity for change. But what would happen if their stories weren't always in response to the status quo, if they weren't always being forced to, in their minds, speak to a whole room full of older, rich white people, where the first thing they have to do is to prove that they're human. You know what I mean? Like, just like them.
That makes
what
so
if
much
they
sense.
could actually just tell their stories, and we trained our audiences or readers or viewers to make that jump into seeing yourself in someone else's completely different story, which, by the way, women, people of color,
is the whole thing that we've been doing.
Literally, we've been trained, like, that's our lives.
Right. Yeah.
And so how do we share that wealth? Because again, I'm really curious about what kind of stories get told and how impactful those stories can be if we can let the storytellers just tell it and not have to change and shift and translate and thank for being allowed to be in the room.
Right. Yeah. No,
if we could just remove all that garbage, what would happen?
Oh man. You know? Yeah. This is really great. Everin, I could literally talk to you
for
10 more days. I'm actually thinking like, okay, how do I get to Ashland? As soon as this is over, we're coming to Ashland. I love
Everyone
Ashland.
Come to Ashland. It's a great place. You want to be here.
I'm going to make a horrible admission. I've never been to Oregon Shakespeare Festival. I've lived in Oregon the majority of my life. My family went when I was like an exchange student one year. So I kind of blame them.
Say is, unless as a student you were came here as a student, you weren't particularly invited again. Like, you know what I mean? So
right, yeah.
You haven't been. I mean, it's the same thing. I lived in the Bay Area for 15 years, which, you know, most of our audience comes from Bay Area and Portland.
Yeah, it's actually,
and I came once, and it was because I was invited to a conference. And I'm a theater person, and I love theater. So it's, you know, come and bring people that are like you.
I will.
You know, because you will have a great time. I mean, I can't actually say that is the space once you get here, and especially as we continue to work the way we've been working, I think it will actually be the kind of space where you and I and those who are younger and cooler than us, as previously
as
stated,
if that's possible.
I know, right?
We're so young.
Not only feel good, like welcome, but I think they will feel centered, right? Like I think that's what's surprising to people is they hear Oregon Shakespeare Festival and there's like balloon pants Renaissance fair is what you know, sort of the image that comes in your mind, and it's not. We've been doing new plays, and the diversity work that's been happening is very much reflected on our stages. So it's here. We just by doing conversations like this, we just need to speak the gospel to more folks so they come.
Yeah.
You know?
And once the pandemic's over, we can come. Okay. My baby's screaming. But my editor had this question.
Yeah.
When you talk to OSF today, ask if they're working on what they're working on for virtual online theater. Are they going to try audio drama? She really wants a podcast, a podcast. That's what she wants.
We do have a couple of podcasts in the works. Mostly, I think one of the things, we have an amazing commissioning program called American Revolutions that's been happening for a long time, about 10 years. That is about new plays that focus on important moments of revolutionary change. Hi, buddy. Revolutionary change in American history in the 20th century. And Allison Carey, who's an amazing, amazing woman who's been running that program, will be having conversations with the playwrights that have taken part in that. And that's like Lynn Nottage, Paula Vogel, like the people are pretty amazing. Cool. In terms of our digital work, we have a digital platform called exclamation point. And exactly. That's a great idea. I should say the name like that forevermore. And what's so interesting for us is that this was part of Nataki's vision way before the pandemic. And of course, it got sped up and became quite central in this moment. So we have, it's osfashland.org/digital. And that link will take you to the current content that's there, which is conversations, amazing artwork. We do a lot of sort of community takeovers. We had an amazing Pride event. We had incredible Latin Heritage Month takeover and National Disability Employment Awareness Month takeover. So all of that content is there. And the other joyful thing, which will happen shortly because our union partners have allowed it, is we'll be able to get access to our incredible archival footage of older plays and be able to release those in the next season. So
cool.
along with what I hope will be a live season eventually, we'll have a very full, sort of almost all-stars digital season.
Wow, that's cool.
We just were able to, we're sort of in the planning stages of that. And, you're a press person, you will know the moment.
Okay, good. Yeah, you know my email address. Yeah.
But yeah, that has been in the works. And I think the thing that I love, again, silver linings, I'm an optimist, that this digital moment, like the O has been seen in so many countries.
So cool.
All over the world. Like
right.
this new digital play I'm doing, This Is Who I Am, where OSF is a co-producer, by Amir Nizar Zouabi, who's a Palestinian writer, and our rehearsals have people from Stockholm and Virginia and New York and Oregon and DC and London. It's crazy. This is going to be the first play that my family in Turkey will have seen of my work in 20 years.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
That's possible.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And yes,
cool.
I miss the in-person. Like I cannot find the words to explain to you how much I miss being in a dark room with people and experiencing a story.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, this is a moment where our horizon can be larger, like it can be wider.
Right.
And we can really start having these international, global conversations with our work that we weren't able to before. So I'm really excited about that.
That's awesome. Well, like I said, I could literally talk to you forever, and I probably will now. Haven't I talked to you in 6 years?
It's like wind Evren up, and then he'll talk.
Yeah, no. Like I will like, yeah, this is the longest one I've ever done, but I don't care. Like, can we keep talking? But I should probably go because I have other work to do, and you probably do too. And my baby is doing this, which means one thing.
That is related. That has to come out of your body. Yes.
Yes, I'm very integral to that process.
Yeah.
So Evren, where can people find your work?
So in terms of OSF, it's osfashland.org. There you will find all of our digital content, as well as, you'll be able to find ways to support the Southern Oregon fire relief effort, which is a huge part of our, service mission right now, of course. And then we have so many actually upcoming live projects by the end of the year. We have a Women of Broadway series that's ongoing, which is again, national collaboration. And then This Is Who I Am, which is a collaboration with 4 other theaters in the country that I'm directing. So I hope people will check that out. And then, I think the other work that I would love to highlight is that I'm on the steering committee of MENA, Middle Eastern North African Theater Makers Alliance. That's MENAtheater.org. And we're part of, many, many organizations that are pushing for the sort of widening of what counts as an American story. So I would love people to check out MENAtheater.org just to find out that national work that's happening and, help us center Middle Eastern North African stories, y'all.
Do it. Yeah, sounds great. Oh, come here. Yes, you got a fanny pack on. The baby's got a fanny pack on now.
I love the fact that right?
Yeah.
She's had like 3 costume changes in this.
Well, she took a bath in the middle there at some point with her grandma.
I love it.
Yeah, she's pretty great. Someday you'll get to meet her in real life, hopefully before she's like a teenager.
Exactly, right? At this point. I do hope I will be back in Portland way before then.
Okay, good. Yeah, me too. You will. Our show is streamed when we feel like it on Facebook and on YouTube. You can follow the Oregonian there. Come here, buddy. You can follow the Oregonian there to make sure you see every episode. It's also available as a podcast. So you can find that at OregonLive.com/podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And later on OregonLive.com, I'm sure I'll have a post about this. So I'm Lizzy Acker. This is Nona. Wash your hands and wear a mask. Thank you.
Please, the whole American theater industry wants you to wash your hands and wear a mask. Please.
Thank you so much. Nona.